I want to start with this statement that, and then I'll explain it, but I just like to see the looks on people's faces. Revival is on the U-Haul. They have no idea, but they will. And so that's the statement I want to start with. Before I moved to Cleveland, I moved from Summersville back down to Wyoming County, and that's when I became a part of Pastor Jay's church. Jay has been mentoring me for a very, very, very long time, since about 2014 or 2015, but I became a part of his church and fellowship last year, and he gave me some office space, and that's where I settled for a few months before I made my transition to Cleveland. It was like a stop in between. And so I have sort of a workday routine like many of you would perhaps have when I'm not traveling on the road. And so I was in this season of, we weren't traveling a whole lot. I think it may have even been the beginning of one of the other variants that busted out. And so we were just in a time where it was very settled down. And in that time, there were a lot of people moving back to our church. And Jason was one of them. And he was living here. He was a student at Marshall, and so so the Lord had called him to come back and to be a part of our church. And so they messaged me and they said whenever the time comes, would you be willing to help us move? I said, well, absolutely, I'll help him move back. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I said I'll help him move back. And so I didn't know when it was going to happen. My office routine, I usually dress up something like this to go work in the office because it just feels good to do that. I can't explain it, just feels right. And so when I go in there, I'll get in there early in the morning and I'll study all day long, maybe 8, 10, 12, 16 hours, because I'll forget to eat and all sorts of things. And so I was in there studying one morning, and they're not like any other church I've been to. They have several people working in their office hours, and when I was youth pastoring, I used to work in the church all by myself, but they have several people working in their church in their office hours. And so I was working one morning, and it was the week before the Boone County revival, and so I was planning to, and I see some Boone County people here tonight. I was planning on. I was trying to get a word, praying into a word that the Lord would perhaps give me to minister in Boone County, and it was right up it was probably 5 days away, and I needed a word for the Sunday morning. I usually preach this message on a Sunday morning, but because of what happened last night, where the Lord had deposited something into this church body, I felt it necessary to preach tonight. And so I was up in my office, and I was studying, and I was saying, Lord, what would you like for me to preach to the people? And I was going to devote my entire day to Boone County, which was supposed to be a 4-day revival. And as I'm beginning to study, I have anybody have a routine that you like? You do the same things. You have a morning routine. Anybody have one? I know most everybody has one because we're creatures of habit. Well, I have my routine when I'm not traveling, and so I'm in there studying, and I probably got 1 hour into my 12-hour routine. It was a good start. And I got a knock on my door, and it was Wendy. Wendy is Pastor Jay's sister, but she's also the secretary of the church and the ministry. She knocks on my door, and she says, hey, now I noticed when I parked that morning that there was a U-Haul outside in my parking space. That's enough to make people leave the church if you take a parking space. And I said, well, that's fine. I guess I'll park somewhere else. And so I parked somewhere else. And Wendy knocks on my door about an hour in. I just finished eating my biscuit. That's my routine. You have to. If I don't, it messes up the whole day. And so she knocks on my door. Now I'm in dress type clothes, okay? Because I didn't know this was going to happen to me. So I'm in dress clothes because I'm working. She knocks on my door and she says, hey, are you doing something that you can't get away from? Now, I'll circle back to this in a minute. I need you to pay attention to every detail. Are y'all tracking with me? Yes. Y'all can't lose me this early. If you're still here, say yes. Yes. You might get entertained, but it's going to preach to you. She knocks on my door. She opens it. She says, hey, bud, are you doing something that you can't get away from? And I said, well, no, I don't guess. I was taking a Bible college class that I'm enrolled in. She said, can you get away from it? I said, well, yeah, I guess I could. She said, well, Jay and Jason are downstairs and they need your help. And I said, that's the U-Haul. The month is September. The temperature is 80. I walk downstairs and they're standing there waiting for me. And they're all bright and alert like a kid at his birthday party. They're so excited that they have help. And so I come down the steps, and I go into they walk me into this storage closet that's already full. And they haven't unloaded the U-Haul yet. And I said, okay, well, what do we need? And Jay said, well, it's time to move Jason in. He's home. And we're like, praise God, because now you understand something about Jason, that he's going to bring a lot to the vision of what Pastor Jay has for the church. Are you listening? He has a very creative mind. He does a whole lot in production, a whole lot of things that he's going to bring to the table to help bring the vision that we have as an Appalachia Prayer Center to life. It's very important that he comes. It's a strategic move. It's not just something where he's like, I'm bored, I'm ready to come home now. This is a strategic move in the spirit as well. Do you gather? And so I said, okay, we're all excited that he's come home, because he's going to help us out in many, many ways. And so we walk outside and we throw the U-Haul thing open, and I'm telling you something, it's the biggest U-Haul you could rent, and it was full, because he's married. And so, but him and his wife's things. Now, he did say it was mainly his, but I'm just telling you, it wasn't two people, it wasn't one person, it was two people's things. And so I said, okay, this is going to be quite a day. And I began to get aggravated in my spirit, because I had to work on a revival. I had stuff to do. Are y'all listening? I had things to accomplish. And I was a man on a mission that day, and he was a man on a mission that day. I just didn't know it was going to be his day to accomplish a mission. And I said, okay, where are we moving this stuff to? I thought it was just going to be a matter of unloading and putting it in a place. So they take me to a storage closet, and they open the door, and you can't even see the floor. And I said, we're putting it here? And Jay said, yes. And I said, where? And he said, well, we of course have to clean this room out first. And so here comes the apostle beginning to strategize. I want this to be a burn pile. This is and it is also very organized. This pile and this pile and this pile and this pile. And so we're piling stuff up. We got to take this stuff over here. And so we basically had to clean the room before we could put the new stuff into the room. Now understand something, and this is where you might draw some. You might begin to get some points here when you understand that his church has not always been called Appalachia Prayer Center. It used to be called New Life Church before the transitions came in 2017, 18. And so now it's Appalachia Prayer Center. This storage closet is full of stuff from New Life. Old stuff, 20-year-old stuff. Any hoarders in the room? You have one on the front row. And so, all this old stuff, hear me, from a previous season that is no longer effective. It's no longer useful. Not only is it old, ineffective, and no longer useful, I mean, we're talking paint from 2001. That's how much he hoards. Stuff that is impossible to use, yet it's still there. Why? I don't know. We're pulling out all kinds of stuff. Jason's pulling out things. I haven't seen this since I was 5. I said, I've never seen it in my life. Jason, I haven't seen this since I was 5. Jay said, well, I had it when I was 5. And so there's all this stuff that can't, it's useless. But it's still taking up space. And so before we could get the new stuff for a new vision, for a new season, before we could even get it into our building, we had to get the junk out of our building. And so we spent all day in dress clothes, in dress shoes, in dress shirts, in 80 degrees, putting stuff in piles, apostolically, of course. Even the cleaning was strategic. And we're putting all this where it needs to go. Now, you couldn't even see the floor. I'm not kidding. Couldn't even walk through the room. You remember? I mean, comments you made about, you can't even see the floor, Dad. Where is it? It's just a concrete floor. You can't see it. It was so riddled with old stuff that you couldn't even see the foundation you're standing on. Kind of sad they're getting it before I'm getting there. But I'm glad that means you're paying. Are you still here? It was so full of stuff that we couldn't even see the thing that we couldn't even see the concrete that was laid. And we had to go to sweeping, and we had to go to doing, and we had to pull out all kinds of lumber that is very, I mean, you might as well have been pulling out gold bars when you're pulling out lumber nowadays, you know, everything. I'd pull out a board, and now I'm trying to make a day of it because it was aggravating. I'm sweaty, and it's dress shoes, and it's hot, and so I'm pulling out like pieces of lumber that are 50 years old, and I'm like, this is a golden bar in 2021. And I pull out a board that's like this long, and Pastor, look, it's a $500 it's a $500 plank. He's like, Nick, we're working. You know? Because he's very serious about this because he also wants to get it done. And so we finally get this room cleaned, and then we throw open his U-Haul, and then I see this mountain of... I'm sorry, I had a PTSD, a flashback moment. I'm talking stuff all the way to the back. He didn't even know what some of it was. Hey, Jason, what's this? I don't know. Where does it go? I'm not sure. And so are y'all tracking with me? We spent more time moving out the old stuff. We spent more time getting rid of stuff that was useless. We spent more time getting rid of stuff that maybe was effective in 2001, but is no longer effective in 2021. And so we had to get all that stuff out, and then we opened the door, and Jason has some high-tech gizmos that we need to bring the vision to life, including his own brain. And so we had to get all of this stuff into the building because it was time for a changing of seasons. It was time, like the seasons were shifting. Something was pivoting. There was something in the air that didn't look like it looked in 2005. Even the name of his church is not even the same because there's a season, there's a shift that was beginning to take place that even rocked the core of his identity. Hope I could say that. It was such a shift, and I remember being a part of it from the outside when it changed from New Life to APC, to Appalachia Prayer Center. And the Lord came with revival, and when He did, everything changed. I can't tell you one thing about your church that's the same as it was when I met you in 2015. That's what happens when you listen to the Lord. And He begins to shift some things, maybe even down to the name of your church. Now, it doesn't always have to go that way. We just had to listen to the Spirit of God on it, and He did. And so, but with this move, it was not just bringing in new stuff. It wasn't, can I say it this way? It wasn't easy. I was tired. It was exhausting. It drained us. We had to take some breaks to eat, but it drained us. It was taxing. We had to lift some things. We had to sweep some junk out. There was work to be done. And as I'm doing this work with them, the Holy Spirit began to minister. And of course, Pastor looks at me and says, "You never know, man. You might get a message from this." He didn't know anything I was thinking in my mind, and as soon as we opened his U-Hauls, boom, I was like, oh. Because when we opened, can I keep going? When we opened it, as soon as the hatch opened, I heard Holy Spirit, "Here's revival." He said, "Revival's on the U-Haul." I said, "No, it's not." because I'm already tired. You understand? I'm already exhausted. I'm already, like, we sweat enough to clean the room. It was hard enough to shift our storage room in a way that could fit what was being brought to us. That was hard in itself. And then we wanted to bring this new thing in, and that also took some stewarding. Because you had some sensitive glass objects, perhaps, and some expensive things that you can't drop when you take it off the U-Haul, or you'll break it and you won't be able to use it when you get it. Well, Nick, what are you preaching? This move of God is a sensitive thing. It's a delicate thing. It's a precious thing. And as of last night, he broke something over the building, and it's sitting right here. I mean, it's really sitting in the back of the trailer, and I'm going to go ahead and just lay it on you right now. It's there for you if you will first clean out your... But it's there. I find often that when we cry out for revival, we get it. It's just sitting outside waiting on you. Because you haven't yet opened the hatch and brought it in because you don't have anywhere to store it. But it's there. Touch your neighbor and say it's there. No, it really is there. It's outside. Maybe not outside in the parking lot. I feel like maybe for some of you, it's just sitting right there at the door. And I've heard some old-time preaching like, well, I tell you, if Jesus wants to bring revival, and the old-time, they have to say at the end of everything, so I'm going to say at the end. I tell you, when Jesus wants to bring revival, he's going to just kick the door in, and then he's going to lay it on you. No, he won't. Can I tell you something about my Jesus? He's a gentleman, and according to the 3rd chapter of Revelation in the 20th verse, he doesn't kick your door in, he knocks on it. And he says, behold, I stand at the door and I knock. And if you answer, I will come in and dine with you and you with me. But you... Now, my generation maybe won't understand that because in King James it says, I'll sup with you. And my generation doesn't know that word. Like Jesus, they think Jesus walks in and says, sup. They hear Jesus knocking and they answer. They think Jesus is just going to pop in there and be, what's up? Here I am. Like, no, he says he wants to fellowship with you. He says he wants to sit at your table and dine with you. But the problem is, some of you, your tables are full. It's a shame when Jesus has to walk into your house and ask if that seat's taken. Oh, you'll cry and beg for revival, and then when it comes, well, that's not the way I anticipated it. Oh, you'll cry and beg for revival, and then when a third of the church leaves because they're mad. Oh, well, I'm going to preach it anyhow. You cry and beg. Can I just tell you something? There's a great portion of the church that does not want revival because it does not coincide with their way of doing church. It does not work with their religious box. It doesn't work with their weekly schedule. It doesn't work because it means they have to sacrifice. It means they're going to have to go outside in their dress shoes and pull some things off the U-Haul. Come on. It means they're going to have to sweep the floor a little bit. They don't want revival if they... I dare say that if you knew what you were praying for, you might quit praying for it because you have not yet counted the cost of what it takes to see it come into your building. I want to tell you it's costly. I want to tell you it's pricey. I want to tell you it's expensive. I want to tell you it's taxing. I don't say that to scare you because revival is all we've got. No, I'm gonna preach it anyhow. Revival's all we've got. That's all that's left for this city. It's revival or bust. It's awakening or bust. You can either have a genuine move of God, or you can let the principalities stand there with their axes on the road. But as for me and my house, we're gonna serve the Lord, and we're gonna see awakening. But it's gonna take some sweat. It might take some sacrifice. It might take some people getting mad at you. It might take some religious people doing a little bit of this. Oh, it might. But I've come by to tell you tonight, there's a new gatekeeper in town. He's got his sword up high. Some of you have not yet received it because there's no room in your table. There's no room in your inn for him.